Hi, Josie.
Hello, Amanda. Nice to see you.
Hello. Nice to see you too. We're going to give it a minute and let the room populate here for about a minute. We have about 40 people in here and we have 120 registered. So we'll give them a minute to get in here. Should we play Where in the World is Josie?
Yes.
Where in the world is Josie?
Well, right now I'm in Long Beach. I'm not. I'm in at Huntington Beach, which is in the middle between Newton Beach and Long Beach. So I'm getting the last dots connected of my trip, looking up all the high performance clubs in the United States and getting to see some colleges while I'm doing that. And so I'm getting more or less the grips of how huge the country is in a way and how different.
A lot of rowers. That's a good thing. Yes.
Lots of rowers.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm seeing a lot of familiar names in here. And we'll give it until 7:02 and then we will get started. I see some current athletes. I see some coaches. And great. Okay. I won't ask you what your favorite state is yet. Maybe we shouldn't do that.
I will answer Hawaii.
Good answer. That's safe. Okay. Well, I think we'll get started. Good evening, everybody. I'm Amanda Kraus, and I'm the CEO of US Rowing. Super excited to have everyone here this evening joining us. We have over 120 people registered to attend and hear from Josie. And I'm going to turn it over to him in a minute, over to you, Josie. But first, I want to give a little bit of background, share a couple of updates. I will say it's been a pleasure taking over the helm of US Rowing just over a year ago. We've been focused on professionalizing the organization, improving structure, staffing, systems, and really, when we think about the national team, focused on increasing support for all of our athletes, as well as improving the overall athlete experience. So looking specifically at the national team in the context of US Rowing, because that's why you're all here, we're going to talk with Josie. So I won't talk about him too much except when I introduce him. I want to talk about the fact that we are really thinking about an athlete-centered approach. We are leading with transparency, improved communications for athletes, and really growing resources for athletes. Tied to that, we're prioritizing fundraising. I'm happy to report that we have a 4-person development team for the first time in US Rowing's history, led by Tracy Brown. We have $1.9 million to raise for the national team in 2022, which we'll be raising through individual donations, corporate sponsors, and we have a grant proposal pending with the NRF, a group that has historically been incredibly supportive of the team. The biggest lift for the fundraising team here is the national team. So one effort that we're focused on this spring and summer is the launch of a US Rowing Foundation. This will be a group that is solely focused on supporting the mission and the vision of the national governing body. Again, the priority will be the national team. The development team is really focused on outreach to individuals, corporate sponsorship, grants. They're also running some exciting events this year. So we have a cycling event coming up in the fall. We, of course, will have the Head of the Charles tent. We have the Golden Oars reboot, which is sort of a reimagined gala in the fall, in November. And, you know, I wanted to just bring up briefly the fact that I've heard more than once since I started, well, if I give to US Rowing, am I just putting money into a black hole? The answer is a definitive no, you are not. We are restricting gifts according to donors' wishes and intent. So if you want to support the women's team, you want to support para, you want to support grassroots rowing, you just let us know and the team restricts it. We can report out on the use of funds at any time. So we're really trying to be transparent, really trying to make it clear just how strongly we take the responsibility of, you know, safeguarding donors' funds and really putting them where they'd like to have them put. Historically, the national team alumni have been the greatest supporters of the national team. We've relied on donations for coaching and travel and equipment, and that hasn't changed. You are truly making the future possible for this team. So thank you for that. Now I want to shift to Josie, over to you, Josie, and say that finding Josie was not easy, to say the least. This was a 5-month international search with some very compelling candidates. We were looking for someone with international experience, but not just experience, but success as well, who could lead, who can envision a new and different future for this team that focused on athlete wellness, sports science, someone who had the work ethic and approach, who could make this possible, really put the well-being of our athletes first and the success of the team. More than one person said, Amanda, you're looking for a unicorn. What we came to learn, though, over time is that, and I think this has been really confirmed since Josie started in January, is that we weren't looking for a unicorn. We were looking for Josie Verdonkschot. I'll let him speak for himself, but I think you, the athletes, will really appreciate the value that Josie is bringing to our program. He has a completely different approach to how we're running things. He's transparent, he's thoughtful, he's engaged with athletes at every turn. Every time I see him, when I do see him, because he's been on a whirlwind tour of the United States, but he is really focused on conversations with the athletes and putting their well-being and their success at the forefront of everything he does. So I couldn't be happier. I'm so pleased to have Josie here. I think the future is bright. And I'll just say, before I turn it over to you, Josie, that you, the athletes, your voices, your engagement is so important to us and so valued. So if you've already been involved, thank you. If you are looking to, get involved again with US Rowing, please don't be shy. We want to have you all in this journey with our current athletes and our future athletes as we look towards Paris and then we look towards LA. So very optimistic. And without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Josie, wherever you are.
As I said, in California. Well, thanks for the very flattering and, luckily enough, a bit longer introduction. It saves some time off the webinar we are going to produce over here, because basically I'm looking at a black screen now, and people told me, would you be open for a meeting with the national team? And I said, yeah, great. And I didn't really realize, first of all, obviously it's going to be Zoom, but on the other hand, I didn't really realize that it's difficult to communicate in this way, because the webinar is about sending. And I think in this case, one of the major things I try to accomplish is to communicate. And in communication, it's always a bi-directional thing or multi-directional. And so I'm really hoping that you people are going to help me by having lots of questions, because in a way, part of my job would be listening, filtering, and making sure that we get the best solution for the situation we're in. Because for people who don't know me, I'm 65 years old. I'm born in the Netherlands. I walked on to a students club in 74, so I'm the traditional walk-on. I did my rowing, and then I did my part in keeping the club alive. It's how it works in the Netherlands. You start by becoming a member of the board, or you do some coaching, whatever, to keep the club running. And from there on, I started my professional career. I had a career in information technology a long time ago, but rowing started to take up a little bit more of my life. So I've been on and off the national team in the 90s as a coach. Then I came on from Sydney on Olympic Games. I came on as a national team coach for the Netherlands. As every coach, you get fired once in a while. I got fired in 2007 by the Dutch Federation because it was kind of, we could call it stubborn. And then in 2008, I got a gold with the Dutch lightweight women's double. So they rehired me. By the way, that year I was an independent coach. I had the Belgium team and the Dutch. But the rehiring in the end wasn't really the way I wanted it. So I went to Italy. I had a really great time in Italy coaching the Olympic team, and specifically the women in Italy. And then 2013, I came back to the Netherlands. Had a really nice period there again. But as always, you have to have the right feeling. And after 2021, I thought it might be time for another shift. And then this opportunity came up, and it was more or less a coincidence. People stumbled upon me and I stumbled upon the opportunity, and we had some chats. And in the end, I think this is going to be yet another great challenge. And I'm really happy that I get the opportunity to take that challenge. So far my introduction. And then what are we going to do? That's a very good question, because bringing in one person, having lots of chats and having lots of meetings in the end is not going to change something. But maybe it will help if I would share my basic philosophy, how I look upon rowing and how I look upon a system that could be successful on the short term, because in 2024 we've got Paris, but also on the longer term, looking at LA and beyond. LA, one of the greatest challenges. I've never coached or I've never been part of a sports team in a country that is involved in upcoming Olympics, but I think that creates another layer of opportunities as well. But about philosophy, according to me, it's a very simple and straightforward process. In the end, we, the coaches, the administrators, the team, are not the center of the universe. The center of the universe is the athlete. On the other hand, we need some direction. So the system should be driven by coaches, not by administration, by coaches. It should be supported scientifically and in other means, medically, etc. And it should be aiming at high performance. That's the only goal. We do this because we want to aim for the highest possible, which in the case of rowing could be success at the Olympics, but for a personal career of any athlete would be to have his best performance at whatever level he is capable to achieve. Talking about athlete-centered, there are some elements to that. One would be identification of the right people. But bringing in people is not enough. We have to look at how to embed the athletic career within a team, within the services an athlete deserves. Because in a way, to compete at the highest level, we have to have a high service level for all athletes involved. We have to make sure that we have a good system which has room for the treatment, the program, and all add-ons that a good athlete would need to perform at the highest level. But then, as we all know, rowing, it's not a professional career. So we have to look at dual career. We have to look at how an athlete can integrate his career in his future, because you can't put your life on hold for so many years. You have to look on, and we have to be, we as coaches, as staff, as organization, have to look at the possibilities an athlete needs, which would be a dual career, combining an athletic career with an economic, academic, and social life. I mean, it is not that we can put everything on hold. We should look at the other areas, just because we can have longer the same athletes, because a happy athlete that feels well in his environment, doesn't feel the pressure that he puts everything on hold, will stay longer in the system. And in the end, that will give us better results. So that brings me to, we have to keep the athletes for a longer span of time within our system. So our system is not just the national team. Our system would be from the juniors to the under 23s and then beyond, because it's a career path. As in all business models, we have to look at a career path for an athlete, and we have to define all the stages for an athlete. Then about coach driven. It's not like I need a plan for the training of next week. I think that as a good coach, I should be able to provide a plan where we know what are the key elements of the plan, what will be the performances, when will the performances be necessary, what is our timing, what do we expect of people, how do we expect them to train. So we have to define our philosophy, because if we want people, if we want athletes to buy in, if we want athletes to feel secure, we have to have a plan and the right philosophy. We also have to optimize our resources. We have to look, not just try to reinvent the wheel every time, but we have to have an organization that looks into make efficient use of all the resources that are in place. If I talk about service supported, we talk about key elements like physiology, biomechanics, strength and conditioning, nutrition, sports psychology, all those elements. And it's not like rowing is just a science. It is rowing as a basis. It's very simple. You put your blade in. I hope I'm still within the screen. You push and you extract, and you try to disturb the boat as little as possible. I had a really nice conversation about that with Don Sparrow the other day. What we want is to make clear to people what is an efficient way to row. So that's not only a training philosophy, but also a philosophy about how to be efficient in a boat. And then the final point of my basic sentence, athlete-centered, coach-driven, service-supported, and high-performance-based is to prioritize. We have to make sure that we get the best individuals and that the best individuals get the best opportunities. So this means it doesn't matter where you come from. You just have to show that you can excel. And then it's not that you have to go to this one certain place for the rest of your life. We have to check how we can bring those people at the right moment, under the right conditions, put them in the best crews. And in this way, optimize our performance. So be my philosophy. And now it's very nice to have a nice philosophy, but we have to look at the situation, because it's not possible. I can tell you great stories about how everything is beautifully organized in the Netherlands, or how everything is organized in Germany or in Great Britain, or I don't know, New Zealand. But I'm not in New Zealand right now. I'm not in Great Britain. I'm in the US. So we have to look from scratch. It's not really true, but we have to look with an open mind what will work and what will not work. So let's talk about the elements. Let's talk about talent identification. Well, there's this great junior system, but even more, there's this great college system, which actively recruits and actively facilitates athletes. So we have to look as an organization in how to integrate, because it's not that we are going to create a new world, and it's not that people, when they reach the age of 23 and age out of college or age out of the under 23 team, that a new life begins. We have to roll out our philosophy and bring it to the colleges. And furthermore, it's not that I want people to just follow, but we have to bring good ideas, and it's up to the people to pick what they think is adequate in their situation, because it might be different when you're rowing in an Ivy League school, or when you're rowing in a program, in a club program somewhere in, I don't know, Virginia. So all those programs have their value, and we have to find a way how to get the best people within the national team system. If I go to the juniors, one might differ a little bit upon that. I do not think that to be a good rower, you have to start when you're at age 12. I think rowing is late entry sports, and that's a problem because you've got a lot of competition from like swimming, athletics, etc. But I look at the bright side of that. People who started off with their sports at an early age, probably by the time they get to college, they get bored and they want something new and they want to party on Thursday evening. So there's a great resource of people walking onto the university which had different sports. Plus, and that's the plus, there's a great resource from juniors rowing. So the only thing we have to make sure of is that we've got a clear pathway with a definition of each level where we expect somebody to be at his, and I call this athletic age, because it's not a biological age, but it's an athletic age. To give you an example, my lightweight double that won the Olympics in 2016, women, one was 24, the other was 34. The girl that was 24 started rowing when she was 14. The girl that was 34, she started rowing when she was 24. Before that, she was a speed skater. And she was doing med school at the same time. And she started at that point with taking up rowing. But being a speed skater and a great talent, she came through the system quickly. Actually, she made the Olympics in 2012. That was when the other girl was still rowing juniors and under 23s. But bringing that together creates great opportunities. So for me, talent ID is not just finding the right people, but also creating a pathway step by step, making clear to everybody what one would expect, and also make clear to the athlete what we would expect. So one can compare himself to where he is in his aging. One other thing about that is it shouldn't matter. It shouldn't be a coincidence whether you picked up rowing somewhere in the nice neighborhood near New York, or whether you pick up rowing somewhere in the suburbs in Philadelphia. It shouldn't matter, because our programs should have a way of entering people from different backgrounds. And it's not just about diversity. Obviously, this is about diversity, but it's also about creating opportunities for us as an organization. So in that way, what we need is communication. We have to reach out and we have to make it clear in our communication to all stakeholders. Sorry, it says my internet connection is unstable. I hope you still can hear me. Anyway, we have to make clear to all stakeholders what we are looking for and how people can be involved and or can measure themselves with the rest of the country. So about the areas to cover, so we need to benchmark. We have to make clear to everybody what are the benchmarks we would expect when you're 14 years, or when you're 16, or when you're rowing for 2 years, or when you're rowing for 4 years. We have to make, like when I want to take up pole vaulting, just take every day, take a try at 6 meters, which would be kind of 18 feet, but start off at a lower level and have a success experience by achieving 2 meters, 2.5, 3, 3.5. Because as long as I see the stairs, I can see that I'm improving, I will continue. If I only see the top, I just see that I miss, that I'm not good enough. And that's not a message that is necessarily positive for young athletes who try to bring themselves to the highest level. And it works two ways, because being the best of your age group doesn't necessarily mean that you're good enough, because the standards have to be objective. What do we need at an international level? What do we need, and what should people internationally trying to achieve? Not just being the best of your age group, but just how to grow and what are the objective steps? How can you measure yourself up to the international competition? Because in the end, it doesn't matter if you win, let's say, a singles trial or a double trial. You will be able to compete for the national team, but will you be able to compete? And I think that's what we should be aiming for, competing at the highest level. So if I talk about philosophy, and I talked about the importance of things like physiology, etc., it is obvious that it's not about theory. So how can I communicate what we need if we don't have a good definition of what we expect? So what we should be doing is bringing out information. We should make information accessible to people to know what a good program looks like, to know what good rowing looks like, to know what we can do about injury prevention or injury rehab, what we can do about strength training, how nutrition can be a part. In the end, all those little things are not the main ingredient, because the main ingredient would be the athletic performance of somebody, but it is all a way of making it easier to reach that level. Because in the end, when you're sailing, just having a tailwind doesn't help. So sometimes it helps to have not everything greatly organized, but a little bit of tail and a little bit of head. So you learn by experience is, according to me, the best situation for an athlete to grow. So when I started off with the fact that the United States offers great opportunities, but if I look at the opportunities, I see a lot of possibilities, but I also see a lot of loose ends, non-connected dots. So my function would be looking at those dots and try to connect them. So like I connected the dots, I had no idea. I had my own idea, but I went to Boston a few times. I was in Washington. I mean, before I came, but I thought it was really important to me to make a tour and visit all high performance clubs and other clubs. So I went to Greenwich. I saw a junior club, but I'm now at near Long Beach, near the Olympic course. I visited Long Beach Rowing Association, met the coaches. I was last week. I was in Craftsbury, spoke to Dick Dreisegegger and Judy Gere. To me, it's really important to understand how to use the knowledge that I might have and how to use the ideas that I might have in an efficient way, because it doesn't make sense just coming out here and explain to you, everybody, this is how it's done. Because one has to, in order to start something new, it's not going to be a revolution. What we need is evolution. And what we need is to look at all the good things. I spent some entertaining, I wanted to say hours, but it probably was 90 minutes on a lounge with Steve Gladstone. I mean, for me, those opportunities are great because, first of all, I get a feel of rowing in the US. And second of all, I get all kinds of ideas that help me to understand how the system works right now and what would be options for me to connect those dots. So in a way, I think many things are in place, but also many loose ends or many things are not connected right now. I think about philosophy and about my tour, that kind of was enough. There's some extra remarks I want to make about how I see the future in a way, and how I see that my ideas could be integrated in the United States. And then I would like to open up to questions from people that I know by name. And I really, how do you say? John Bigelow, for instance, that really sounds great to my ear. I recognize so much of your history, and that makes me eager to participate and to help to make something happen over here. But anyway, so how could we build a US program that is typically US, but takes the fruit of the knowledge of different systems in different countries? So first of all, one centralized system like New Zealand, bring everybody to the middle of nowhere and ask everybody to perform, every day in a training center, and have no option for people like Emma Twigg in 2016. She was cut off the program in 2015 just because she had to study in Great Britain for 1 year. I don't think that's an option. First of all, the United States is huge. New Zealand has about 6 to 8 million people. US has 300 million. So it's no comparison. And then our athletes, they've got all kinds of backgrounds, but we cannot expect everybody without any promise, put everything on hold if there's not a funding system. The funding system in New Zealand is great. Everything is organized. And probably we can arrange the same over here, but I even would doubt that anybody would throw it all away, put everything on hold. So that's not an option. Then there's the system like in Great Britain, where they've got a national training center, but they also have got those satellite clubs. Those satellite clubs, basically, they get a national team coach who works with talented athletes who are kind of put into those places. That's already a little bit closer, but still, since we do not really, we cannot provide the university places. It would be nice. That's the Italian way I did it. I had an agreement with universities, and I had kind of scholarships to put people in the right university. But now, I can accept that universities, the colleges have their own priorities. So I leave that up to them. But we have to look at a way how to, on one way, centralize part of our program, which could be, as it has been in the past in Chula Vista, which could be at Mercer, which could be, but also could be at different places like Texas, like California Rowing Club, which has been a national training center. But those clubs like Texas, like in Boston, like I could name more places like in Craftsbury, they've got their own infrastructure. They've got a good planning. They've got a good way of taking care. And to the athletes, that offers the possibility to have part of their training right where they are studying or right where their job is. To me, that would be some dots to connect. To me, in my case, that would mean it's like if the mountain doesn't come to Muhammad has to go to the mountain. So we have to bring the services that the athletes deserve and would need to those centers. So that would be trying to find a good way of integrating the current system with what I think would be a next level. Same thing about the centers. So if I look at the training center at Mercer Lake, it has a great history, but it's not a Division I center. So we have to look at the facilities where we have people train, and we have to upgrade it, because to be honest, if you want to be efficient, we have to set high standards. We can't rely on goodwill of a college or goodwill of a club of providing everything. We have to set the standard ourselves. We cannot just ask a club to provide it all and then don't do the same ourselves. So we have to step up. As US Rowing, we have to have top training centers, not just at one place, and have a good understanding with top clubs where we know that we also have a part in the bargain, that we have to bring some services. And on the other hand, we can expect some services from there. So what I see as one of the better solutions would be create bubbles like top clubs, high performance clubs, could be even high performance colleges. Same, if somebody ages out, I don't see why he couldn't stay on that university. So we create bubbles, and now we get to the concentration part, because one of the questions I saw pass by, or it is about sculling. I think that the majority of an Olympic cycle is getting better. So I think the bubbles, high performance clubs, or even national training centers, for a large part of an Olympic cycle should be concentrating on individual training. Because if you want to make a person better, it shouldn't depend on the slowest person in his boat. It should depend on himself or herself. So I think one of the focus, so the advantage of having more places where people can go goes together with the advantage of teaching better small boat skills, because I'm totally convinced that every rower will train more efficiently if he trains at his own level. So that would be in a single, or maybe in a pair, but preferably small boats, because let's put it this way. If you've got one person, he's a great sprinter, and one person who's a great endurance athlete, if I put them together in the boat and I make them do the same program, it's like mixing up everything a little bit, and both of them will not get as good as they could get. We could look at what's better for the endurance guy. He could do some longer high intensity pieces, and it wouldn't hurt him. And the sprinter guy, no, we should teach him to do some longer steady states and build it up gradually, and not kill him every training. So individualization goes together with an infrastructure that is more or less decentralized. And this also brings up the fact that we need to look at it with an open eye. So if I look at a team, I'm not interested in May or in April who's in the 8. Actually, I would be interested in who is in the 8 in April 2024. But before that, I'm not interested. First of all, we have to make sure that we've got the right people, the right athletes. Second of all, we have to build. It's not a one-year system. This time is a triennium, but normally it's a quadrennium. And it goes up and down. The fluctuation, the natural fluctuation should be reflected also in the time people get for their study, for their job, for their social life. And then we build up, because right now, repeating every year, doing the same trials, going through the same motions, and have your, it's defensive. It's all playing defense. If you want to get medals, you can't play defense, because with defense you do. So we have to look, I agree, we have to look at bringing up people, making them better as individuals, and giving the best shot to the best individuals, which means, so what's the best shot next quadrennium? Will it be the men's quad? Would it be the men's 8? Would it be the lightweight women's double? We have to look at it, and we have to first of all identify the athletes, and then put them in the right boats, where probably the candidates for the light double wouldn't be really eligible for the men's 8, unless as a coxswain. But for the rest, I mean, we should be open to that. So we should build a group, and the group shouldn't be together all year, because who needs it? It's individual training. We have to bring up people. And if we want, the tuning of a boat, I can get, I don't know, there's so many great coaches in the United States, great college coaches, and you give them a bunch of guys in 2 weeks, they'll get them up to speed. That's not a problem. You just have to make sure that you've got the right guys. So then the final part of my conversation now, before leaving it up for questions, is about our program. I mean, Amanda obviously touched finances. I'm not good at that. I'm good at spending, however. But to my idea, so what we should look at is at creative ways to make the life of the athletes easier. So that means it can be direct funding, but it can also be in relation to dual career possibilities. It could be in services you provide that cost money for an athlete. So I think that one of the main shifts that has taken place this year is there's been a shift of investment in let's say the basic setup of a training center to a more diverse selection camp setup where we bring people together for a shorter period, where we bring in coaches. So that means that the way we are looking at it is more or less like looking at projects. What I want to define is projects, and then the assets around that, one asset is coaching, depends on the situation, because as the United States, you've got a bunch of great coaches that have worked here in the past, have had many successes, and I could name them, but we all know the people, they got medals, etc., but they are not always all round. Not everybody is good enough, was patient enough to work with the lightweight women's double. Not everybody is good enough, to work with a men's 8. Everybody has his own specialty, and we should look at it in making it more efficient. So be more clever about how to use your coaches, how to bring in the best people, plus bring in younger people, because I totally respect the generation that is still around, but I think that generation should be able to share the knowledge with the younger generation of coaches that will be our coaches in 28 and beyond. So that's also part of my, what I say, my philosophy. I think that we should invest in not just in bringing up athletes, but also in helping bringing up coaches, because people tell me that coaching level in US is not high enough, whatever. It is not true. There are enough good and young coaches that want and willing to learn and have the intelligence, have everything what it takes, except for the chance. So we also have to create chances for that. And in that respect, you as former national team athletes are a great asset, because I'm looking at ways how I can make it work. I think that passing on experiences is a big part of speeding up the learning process. So basically that's the major story. Maybe, Amanda, we can go get to some questions.
Yes, I think that would be great. And I've been nudged here to see if you want to make a fun announcement about Filippi, because that's official.
Okay, I would like to make that announcement. So everybody knows that if you are the right athlete, the boat doesn't matter. And we had a great opportunity. US Rowing had a request for proposal, and the best proposal, and to my account also the best proposal for the athletes, came from Filippi, because it's not just connected in providing an entire domestic training fleet, which adds up to more or less 80 boats, not just for seniors, but also for under 23 and for the para program, plus the international fleet at no cost for all our championships abroad. Plus, and that's the nice thing, $100,000 in direct athlete support. So what will happen is the best performing athletes obviously will get a little bit bigger share, but there's a direct plus for the athletes that will use those boats. So I'm really excited about it. We looked it up. The medal spread, they had more or less 60% of the medals in Tokyo. One could argue not in the big boats, that's true. In the big boats, it was 50-50, but still, I think we've got the best boats, and I think we've got the best conditions for our athletes, and I'm really happy with that new agreement.
Okay, thanks, Josie. I think Amanda Cobb is going to jump in and pass on questions. Is that right, Amanda? Amanda C?
Yes, unless Josie, can you see them in the question and answer? If you can, I'm happy to read them.
So it starts with the men's quad, or am I out?
Start with, what do you think about the US sculling situation, and how does it relate to sweep rowing? That's John Biglow.
Yeah, I know. That's the first question that popped into my eye. That's a very interesting question, because when I went to Sarasota, I was really happy to see that there were trials in singles for over 36 women and more or less a bit over 30 men, which is great. And it seems that there's more depth. So COVID, however bitter that situation has been, also has forced many people to focus on the sculling. And so I think that our level is getting higher. What we will do, I do not think it's going to help anybody to repeat the situation of the last cycle, where the men's quad was kind of a trials boat. The women's quad was kind of selected after all other boats were selected. I think, first of all, we should focus on individual quality, which means that we should focus on the sculling program in the single and in the doubles. And we should use those qualities and bring the best people into the best boat. So for me, this year, it's not really important whether we have whether the quad would be prioritized, or the double, or the single. I think it's a kind of a first of all, you have to have the right level. So we have to bring people together and put them in competition, because in a sculling camp, why would you sit in a quad all the time? I think it would be nice to do some smaller boats there as well. So I think the sculling situation is better. I think one of the decisions we made is that the first camp is not going to be divided sculling or sweep. It will be integrated. And on the end, according to me, it should stay like that. According to me, for 22 and 23, we have to do the same investment in sculling. And we have to, like I said before, we have to keep on promoting that everybody ups his small boat skills in a single, because that offers the opportunity to make training individual, plus it makes the opportunity to have more boats. To be honest, if you go to the Olympics and you race the 8, you take away a lot of resources, which could be nice if you win. If you don't win, it's a waste of resources. So we have to look at the smaller boats, and sculling is a major part in that, as is the pair rowing, by the way.
Josie, you have questions really sort of coming in quickly now. Can I throw another one your way?
Yeah.
Okay, Dwight Phillips first says, Josie, first, a hearty welcome to US Rowing. And then he asks, could you address the depth of US men's rowing as it relates to our handful of collegiate men's teams who compete very well with each other, but clearly rely on non-US athletes?
So the question is interesting, because there's part of the answer is in there. To be honest, if I look at the system and I see those grade 8s rowing, and I make a calculation how many foreigners are there and how many US rowers are there, probably it depends on the school where you are, and it depends on the program. However, I think in a way, if I look at my experience in the past in like in soccer in Europe, everything went open. In the beginning, everybody had those teams without anybody of the original nation in it, etc. But it kind of middled out. And to me, focusing on talent ID means that we would bring in more people that would have the right level and could be competing with those athletes from other countries. I think that rowing together with the best of the world is an opportunity that someone should cherish. However, I still think that it's a waste that there's no longer focus on freshmen's aids, because according to me, that's a missed opportunity. If I look at it historically, I can probably name up a long line of your most famous athletes who were all walk-ons. And if I look at different countries, the reason why the Dutch excel for a relatively small population is because the fact that 50% of the female team and 30% of the male team are walk-ons, never rode before they were 17 or 18, never rode before college. And it's not a standalone system. That, together with good junior rowing, makes that system powerful. If I look at the US, so you are bringing, youth system is getting better. People are getting to a higher level. I still would think that we could focus more on small boats. And then the college system, I think, US Rowing is not the organization to regulate. There might be some capping on the number of people, I don't know. But to me, it makes sense to have high level competition just to show people what is needed to. Because if you've got this guy that won Olympic gold from New Zealand sitting in front of you, at least you understand what is the difference and what is needed. So I like the mix. I think that the schools that have the strong programs, they are an example. However, I think we should take care of our own and should see if we offer enough opportunities for our best athletes. And then there's also a challenge for our juniors program to, and I could use some strong language, but get them, get them going. I mean, there's nothing different. If a guy comes from New Zealand who picked up rowing at whatever, it's not that they had this wonder food. It's just that they trained in a systematic way. So any guy, any girl can be at the same level if he's got the same talent. It's not like those pools are bigger. And that's one thing, we have to make sure that we offer those athletes the opportunity to excel, which means that we should offer more opportunity for younger people to excel on an individual basis. And we should have a better scouting system to make sure that it's not just the big schools that we see. We should also see the small schools.
Okay, we're going to shift gears over to coaching now. I'm combining two questions on coaching. One is, when will we see information on national team coaching opportunities? And then connected to that is, how will you go about selecting and naming coaches for the men's and women's eights?
Okay, first was more information on national team coaching, and then naming the coaches for the eight. Okay.
Yeah.
First of all, the selection procedures right now are written as in there's a selection camp, and then the selected athletes have a say in the coach they want. So there's a difference between the coach of a selection camp and the coach that goes to the championship with a boat. Then, right now, I've kind of we kind of have almost no national team coaches. There's a junior coach, Casey Galvanek. There's a and then there's Laurel for the women. But this is a strategic decision right now, because I think there's enough people around with the right talent, and as long as you don't have a training center that is really stacked with all the right athletes, it doesn't make sense to bring the best coaches there, because there's no challenge. So what I'm looking at is bringing in good club coaches or good college coaches for the selection camps this year. I hope to develop more than one training center on this term. So coaches at a national training center, to me, are no national team coaches, but they are coach of a training center. So Laurel, to me, is the coach of the training center at Mercer. She is one of the coaches at the selection camp. However, who will coach what boat is a decision where the athletes have a say. And I had conversations with different coaches. I hope to publish by the end of next week the coaches that will be involved in the selection camp. But that doesn't mean that those are the coaches that are going to the races, because simple example, if you've got 4 guys from CRC that will be in the quad, shouldn't I think of a coach that they would propose? And wouldn't that be kind of obvious? Or maybe they've got a different idea. It's not going to help to try and impose things, and then things will develop. I think it will be a more natural situation, because any suggestions, any recommendations from your side will help me. That's again communication. So, but for now, I assign coaches and an observer. I call it a selector for the selection camp. So in the selection camp, there are 2 coaches and 1 observer. They propose the crews, and then the crew, once chosen, has a say in the coach. Is that clear enough?
Yeah, there's a follow-up question in here around, and then I'll go back to the top here, but there's a relevant follow-up question. So somebody's asking, well, how do you get invited to coach at selection camp? So if there are coaches out there who want to be seen, is there a process for that?
There should have been. However, I took on this on a little, let's put it this way. I agree. I'm open to any suggestion. What I did right now is I tried to get a feel together with the people I know in the United States. I've spoken to different people, but there's also this difference. The first camp, it's before NC2As ends. So for the first European part, I can't be looking at college coaches, which to me is a pity, because many of your best coaches and also young good coaches are involved there. So what I did is for the under 23 camps, I already assigned coaches. For the senior camps, I've spoken to different people, and it would not be very useful to use the names now, but I will involve 2 former athletes as observer, selector, with no coaching, with not a real coaching background, just to have the other perspective, and then 2 coaches with experience in that field for now. But if you want to apply, please do me a favor, send me a note. And if you're an athlete, if you want to be an observer at a camp, and you think, I want to, and you've got standing because I need somebody who has the authority that people at least will look up to. So it might be, anybody, but at least you should have enough renown that people will think, okay, it makes sense that he talks about me. Those are the only criteria.
That's great. Thank you. And I can vouch for how sort of coming into this organization and feeling like you're fixing the plane while landing it. And, it's much easier to look ahead and say, well, next year I will have a system and but we often, I have found I haven't had that luxury at times. So looking ahead. So there's a question up here for, with the current focus on high performance clubs and a relatively decentralized athlete experience, how is US Rowing providing or planning to provide technical assistance and support to high performance programs to level set training and resources across different programs and enable athletes and coaches to have equivalent opportunities to excel?
Good question. So I'm not the know-it-all, but what I want to do is we are developing an athletes toolkit. I call it athletes toolkit because it should cover basic ideas about training program, physiology, nutrition, strength and conditioning, etc., etc. And then once I've laid out my philosophy, I will provide a program. However, that's not enough. You also need a network. So we are working on a network with the athlete services that that should be in place. So access to PT, access to nutritionist, access to sports psychologist, etc. Shouldn't be access for everybody. So it should be 2 tiers. There should be athletes of national interest who get selected into the national team, but still train decentralized. There's no excuse for me. I should provide the same service level. Otherwise, I couldn't, it can't be that your conditions are differently. So that's one thing. And the second tier would be making all information accessible to everybody, which would mean a network of people that we can refer to for people who are aspiring or need advice. So about this athletes toolkit, what I call it, we are going to roll it out in the camps that we do, but we also want to roll it out to the high performance clubs, and we also want to roll it out to other interested clubs, just to make sure that information is accessible to everybody. And like I said, that's about what I call basically 5 fundamental. So except for the network, it's the 5 fundamental elements of training in a clever way, which would be physiology and a training program, which would be a way of testing, which would be injury prevention, rehab, etc. So stuff like that. Biomechanics, which is a difficult word, but would mean, how do I think that you should row? How do you make your boat fast? Not about very interesting graphs, but just about speed and how to get speed.
Josie, it is 8:02. Do you want to do the 3 questions that are left? How do you feel?
I feel great.
Okay. This is an interesting, well, they're all interesting. But this is one around progression from this quad 2020, which was really 2021. How are we looking to develop the cohort of experienced athletes preparing for 2028? Similar to what US Sailing, to cite another NGB, has specifically laid out as their priorities, Paris 2024 as an intentional stepping stone waypoint toward LA 2028, ?
Okay. Good question. However, our athletes will not buy in. So all I do is looking at LA, and we have to make sure that we get at least 4 medals in LA, something like that. But if I'm going out there and tell everybody, listen, you have to be patient. Paris is too early for you. Some people don't think over that period. So to be honest, we should work along those lines and looking at the future. So if I look at the future, I look at defining the stairways, defining the level, focusing on both. So that's the reason why we split sculling camp and sweep camp. And we don't send the rejects of the sweep to the sculling, but we have a clear understanding that we select the best quality people for under 23 to sculling and to sweep. So we broaden our base and bringing up people that are now in the under 23 system and that are now in the junior system, which is my next step, because right now it's still independent, but I can assure you that we will integrate it in our pipeline. Then we get a pipeline from junior to under 23, broad, based upon small boat skills. And like that, you can fill your, different boat types. So I agree that it's a long-term development. First step, we separate under 23. Next step, we're going to do the same for the juniors and try to avoid early specialization or growing too much, only big boats.
So, okay, 2 more. This one, I think you sort of already answered, but this is a little bit of a different angle, so I'll give it to you. How do you assemble a national team from the top athletes spread all over the US in 18 high performance centers?
Not. So somebody said 18, huh?
It says 18, yes. So if you want to comment on that, yes, too, you can.
Yes, I don't see. To me, it's not possible to have 18 high performance centers. So you've got high performance clubs, and we have to look on the we have to look upon the questions we ask, because it should be that we have a minimum of service levels that people can provide for those athletes. But then, yeah, I think you can train like from October till March or April at your club. Yeah, I think that's possible. And then we should concentrate in 2 or 3 places. It shouldn't be, and it should be geographically reflecting the rowing community. So we should be concentrating on spots that make sense. So that would be West Coast and that would be East Coast, but not, to me, not West Coast is men, East Coast is women, but just based upon what's the best fit for the crews you create. But still, look at every country. You first off work with a group, and a group can train together in any constellation. Any concentration of 3 or 4 athletes at one club makes it worth the investment. Having one person at one club makes it a little bit more difficult, but we can discuss that. But to me, in the end, we won't have 18 centers that come together, but we would have more or less 10 places where people would be training, bringing them together in winter one time and bring them together for the season from May till August or September. And then obviously going to the Olympics, that period will get a little bit longer.
Great. And this is the last question. Hi, Jim. Athletes race more in Europe. Here in the US, our elite athletes do not race enough, my opinion, his opinion. Besides the NSR racing, are there any other races that could be mandatory for consideration for selection? Your thoughts?
1, I totally agree. 2, what you say is not totally true. If you look at the Dutch men who won the quad, they only raced 1 race and they did not participate in any national racing. So, and they won the gold in Tokyo in 2019. They won the worlds. They only raced 2 races that year, nothing else. But I don't believe that they won because they did that. I think that it's good to create competition. So yes, we should be looking at getting more opportunities, and we should look at a regional system to get people more out in small boats where it isn't an investment like it is now, because bringing everybody out for a regatta at just one place is for everybody always very expensive. It's like Italy, where they had this one center in Piedeluco in the center, but then they found out that 50% of the people lived in Lombardia, which is 600 kilometers to the north, and the other 45% of the rest was from Naples, which is also 600k. So we should try and decentralize, but there should be a system where people can excel. Plus, there should be more mandatory national team testing. I don't want people to test every month, etc. But we should have a very clear indication about what's mandatory and how it works towards selection. Now I'm talking about the test.
Okay, thank you. Josie, is there anything you want to make sure you say before we close out? I have one more plug to make, but I want to make sure there isn't anything else you want to make sure people have heard from you.
I'm pretty sure people have heard from me. So I don't want to start repeating myself. I really enjoy this. I'm looking forward to that. Tomorrow I'll be in San Diego, which is my last dot. And from there on, we start to produce. I'm pretty sure of that.
This is excellent. And we officially have Josie's visa in hand. And well, almost. And this is good news. Josie, thank you. And Tracy and team, thank you for helping to host this evening. For the athletes, for our who've joined us tonight, really appreciate having you here and spending some time with Josie. And we do want to bring people closer. So, whether you are already a funder or you'd like to become a funder, or you just want to help think about sponsors you could put us in touch with, or, helping with our current athletes in terms of their own networking and career opportunities. Tracy's doing all of that work with her team. And you can email her. Her email is tracy.brown@usrowing.org. She told me it was okay to share her email. She wants to hear from people, so don't be shy. Oh, thank you, Tracy. I think only we can see that though, in the, I think, yeah. Oh no, that's to everyone. Thank you, Tracy. Shoot her an email. We'd love to have you all involved. We want to celebrate you all. We want to bring people closer and really support Josie, his vision, this plan, and most importantly, our athletes as they prepare for the years ahead. So thank you. Thanks, Josie.
Yeah, you're welcome. I just typed my mail address. It's so difficult.
Is yours showing up to everybody? Oh, yes, yes.
I send it to everybody.
Okay. Oh, there it is. Okay. Don't forget the K, everybody.
No.
All right. Well, have a good
Bye.
evening. Thank you.
Good evening.
Bye.